Hey everyone, this is Matthew Kemp. Welcome to Theology on the Ground and the Daily Thought for my quiet time. Today we're in Hebrews chapter 11, sometimes known as the Hall of Faith, a little play on the Hall of Fame. So today just taking a brief look at Abraham, or Abram as he was originally called, and I think it's a useful passage we can use to make application to seasons of our own life, especially ones that are difficult, where it doesn't seem like we know where God is or what He's doing or how He's going to come through for us. This is Hebrews 11:8. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out into a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him in the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. By faith Sarah herself received power to conceive, even when she was past the age, since she considered him faithful who had promised. Therefore, from one man, and him as good as dead, that's a nice way to refer to old man Abraham, were born descendants, as many as the stars of heaven, and as many as the innumerable grains of the sand by the seashore. So, here's what happened. If you remember the story, from the end of Joshua, we learned that Abram was raised in Babylon. We also learned that from Genesis 11. Raised in Babylon, but from Joshua we learned he was there worshiping idols. Their family moved to Haran, I don't know how to pronounce it, and that's where they settled. And then Genesis chapter 12, it just all happens very abruptly. Abram was introduced just briefly in a genealogy in Genesis 11, and then all of a sudden it just says that God comes and calls him, says, hey, you're going to leave this land and you're going to go into a land that I'm going to give you. And Abraham just gets up and goes. And we learn here in Hebrews, the passage that we were reading, Hebrews chapter 11 verse 8, that he went out not knowing where he was going. So here's the bottom line, the takeaway for today, that God didn't fully spell out a step-by-step plan for Abram. He got pretty specific at different times. But even still, there was quite a bit of uncertainty for Abram or Abraham. And, you even think about things like he knew he was promised offspring and that Sarah, his wife, was going to bear him children. But, at some point they thought to take matters into their own hands. And, Sarah says, well, what if you get together with your servant and have a child that way, since I'm too old? And so the promises were pretty unbelievable, but they took action. It was the wrong thing to do, to try to help God out and say, okay, well, maybe God doesn't know exactly what He's talking about, so let's try to do this on our own. And so even in those faithless moments, here Abraham is in the hall of faith, and you have the passages like Abraham believed God and it was reckoned to him as righteousness. So that's kind of the way it works. In terms of salvation, in terms of becoming a Christian, there's this sort of once-for-all act, and you're sealed by the Holy Spirit, and you're declared righteous. You become righteous. Romans 3 goes into that at great detail, sort of this process of justification of God declaring you, or even you could say reckoning you righteous. And from that point forward, you are essentially on God's team. God is looking out for your good. The promise of Romans 8:28 applies to you, that God is working all things together for good to those who love Him and are called according to His purpose, and that includes you. And so you might have some faithless moments, right? And you might have some uncertain moments. You're not sure what God's doing. You're not sure what His plan is. You're not sure what the way forward is. And you might even, act in a way that's foolish, faithless, goes against that. But the big idea is that God still loves you, God's still for you, God still considers you as righteous, and that is your ultimate position, your ultimate identity, right? You're still an all-star. You're still worthy of the Hall of Faith, because really the Hall of Faith isn't about what you do. It's about what God does, what Christ does in reckoning you righteous. So those are my thoughts for today. It's a huge chapter, and yeah, see you guys tomorrow.